Read the disclaimers, and please use common sense.
Salutations, denizens of the internet. 'Tis I, Firebite27, and it seems as though everybody here made it through another revolution around the sun, no worse for wear save for that ever-depleting ozone layer. Which means it's time for me to make my end-of-year capstone videos going over my best and worst figures of 2023, and this year, fortunately, I had enough toys to make a worst of list. So let's not delay. These are the top 15 worst figures I got in 2023. I love Beastbox, but in exploring their overwhelmingly extensive backlog of figures, I've discovered that quite a few of them, both new and old, are stinkers. And a lot of said stinkers come from their early days, like Bluearmor. I love the SWAT-themed deco, and I like the design, but the choice to use brittle transparent parts is one of their worst decisions ever. That being said, I don't hate it. It's cute, and the English in the promo images brings me no end of joy. Translucent design in many places. Earthspark as a TV series has been fantastic. A lively main cast with expressive models that only take a little getting used to, a human cast that is not only useful to the Transformers, but not annoying in the slightest bit in any way possible, except Robbie.
Memes for actual days.
And an incredible arc for its main villain that serves as a fantastic allegory for how xenophobia and hatred corrupts and turns us into monsters. However, Earthspark the toy line has been an actual shit show. Not only has Hasbro seemingly forgotten that kids are not stupid, but they've also forgotten that the show models from Earthspark look nothing like the show models from Cyberverse, as they seem to be content with repainting molds from that line that weren't even good and placing them in this line. The deluxe lineup that acted as a gimmick-free sanctum in the Cyberverse line is now a farcical mix of barely repainted figures, retooled figures that remove the articulation of their original mold, and retools that somehow managed to make the worst figures of the Cyberverse line infinitely worse. But in the first wave of Earthspark Deluxes, there was one figure that served as the antithesis to all of the Deluxe line's problems, Earthspark Twitch. And if you remember my review from the start of 2023 covering Deluxe Twitch, you'll know that I was incredibly fond of that figure. But I made a fatal mistake at the end of 2023. You've almost certainly noticed that I am quite fond of posing my figures in fun ways in these videos. This means that to a certain degree, all my figures need tight joints, and if you watched my quote-unquote tutorial about how to tighten joints, you'll know my preferred method is using super glue. But it proves to be a double-edged sword when the plastic I'm trying to tighten up is too soft to withstand the super glue. After that broke my first copy of Legacy Armada Starscream, you figure I would have learned my lesson with Twitch, but...
I told you this was going to end badly.
This hurt especially because I wanted to put Twitch at the top of the best of list. However, I can't now because of my own incompetence. Considering that I promised Stop Motion Reviewer that I'd stop tightening joints with super glue after I broke Starscream, I give him full permission to slap me in the face when we meet IRL for not keeping my promise.
Helicopter, helicopter!
We're back at Beastbox now, and if anything, this one has the opposite problem of Bluearmor. Bluearmor was too simple, blocky, and unarticulated for my tastes, while Onitopte is a complicated triple changer. Now, I don't think there's anything wrong with a complicated transformation. My one and only rule about Transformers and their complexity is that a figure's size needs to make it so that the small moving parts that it uses in order to transform don't clash into each other and become fiddly, and that's the sin that Onitopte commits.
Oh hey, foreshadowing.
He gets so many small parts crammed into such a small space that they all clash together and become fiddly. And that's my biggest pet peeve about this figure, is that its transformation is fiddly. And on top of that, Onitopte has mandatory parts forming in all 3 transformations. I say only get this figure if you absolutely cannot live without it, and you only want to keep it in one single mode. Otherwise, stay away. One of my biggest problems with Earthspark as a toy line, apart from its genuine disrespect towards the intelligence of children, is the fact that none of the characters are in scale with each other. Twitch and Nightshade are deluxes, Thrash and Jawbreaker are both warrior class, but they're getting their deluxes soon enough, and hashtag the tallest of her siblings is a Tacticon. But I got hashtag in 2024, so we'll go with the next best thing, Bumblebee. Tacticons are simple on paper, auto-morphing finger puppets that just flick back and forth between their vehicle and robot mode. However, despite the fact that the bar is literally at rock bottom, Bumblebee manages to screw this up because his doors will occasionally get caught on
Nothing! Absolutely nothing! Stupid! You're so stupid!
and end up locking up the rest of the transformation. I originally thought that this would be a great chance for Hasbro to test the waters and see if maybe there was a market for new Legion class figures. You know, kind of like what the smaller Spark Armor figures from Cyberverse did for the Legends class, and what the Earthspark Cyber Combiners might be doing for the Energon Combiners. However, after Bumblebee here and revisiting some of the Micromasters from the War for Cybertron trilogy, I'm convinced some things are better left in the past. Contrary to what you might expect from the whinging I did back in 2020, I don't actually hate the Earthrise Seeker mold. Yeah, it gained a reputation, but a lot of that reputation came from the hyperbole of online reviews. Sure, I sold off the classic trio of Earthrise Coneheads, but I still have a lot of affection for the mold. In fact, I believe that the best use of this mold was a Conehead released last year. I just never got the standard version because the color scheme I wanted wasn't available in my region. I'd never even tried the standard release, until the Buzzworthy Troop Builder pack came out this year. Out of the 4, I had missed the initial release of 3 of those molds, so getting it was a no-brainer. And let me just say, man, oh man, this is dull. His wings pop off too easily, his articulation is absolutely pathetic even compared to Prime Wars figures, and for some reason they made him the most boring shade of blue imaginable. Glad I rediscovered my love of the Siege Tetradet recently because I'd hate to be an Earthrise completionist.
Loser! You're a loser! Are you feeling sorry for yourself?
I'm not sure if you've noticed this about me, but I love a lot of strange animals. My favorite animal is the bat, and the Plesiosaurus may be my favorite dinosaur. But I love Transformers of these animals even more. But no Transformer has ever done any of these animals justice. Nessie here is a looker, coming across as a Beast Wars Shockwave, but her articulation is lacking, especially with how segmented her neck looks. This should have SH Monster Arts level of articulation, not the articulation of the original Godzilla suit. That being said, I don't actually hate her. I have come to love her since I got her, but that initial frustration is still there. I really should have mentioned this during the prior entries on my list, but part of the reason why I've softened on the early releases from the Beastbox line is because I've gotten a lot of figures from the line, and each new figure has given me context for how the line has grown. But just because I can see their early releases in the context of their time doesn't mean I'm forbidden from disliking some. Jojo here is the second ever mold that they ever designed, and it really shows both in the aesthetic and the lack of articulation. The original cartoony aesthetic of the Beastbox line just clashes with its more realistic modern offerings, and the articulation is just middle of the road, really. However, I ultimately decided to put him on this list because I wanted to put myself on blast because I only wanted him because he was a JoJo's Bizarre Adventure reference. My heart wasn't in the right place when buying him, and I'll go into what the JoJo reference is a bit later on when I actually review him in Dio. Until then,
Get back, JoJo!
what do you get when you take the first deluxe Optimus Prime that we've gotten since the end of the Aaron Archer era and retool it into a vehicle and robot mode that it was never supposed to have? Why, you get a figure that embodies the insipid moon logic of the Earthspark Deluxe lineup, of course. Earthspark Deluxe class Optimus Prime should be a fantastic retool on paper. The colors are deeper and prettier, the plastic quality is much higher. 4 years and a degree all for this. But this figure failed on so many levels. The transformation requires more parts forming, the parts reused wholesale from the Cyberverse figure don't really match aesthetically with the rest of the figure, and they removed the waist swivel. I'm sorry if that seems like a ridiculous complaint, but in my opinion, that is irredeemable. Granted, it's impressive that they got this to turn into that, but it's more impressive to me that they somehow managed to make the Cyberverse Grimlock figure even worse. However, I'm not sure how that's possible without making it a health and safety violation, so I'm not buying it. Continuing onwards from 2022, I wanted to keep my kick on the RID2015 Warrior class up and running, and when I found out there was an RID15 Windblade at my local collector store, I was excited. However, I may have let my excitement get the better of me. I'm gonna put myself on blast here and say that my expectations were way too high, but I was still disappointed.
But that was before Transformers Legacy United dropped a new and fantastic Windblade into our laps, so
I don't think I'll be missing this one anytime soon. Oh look, another beast box. Zippity friggin' doodah. Which legitimately calls my love for this line into question. PhantomMaster is the embodiment of my pet peeves when it comes to using small parts in transformation. A lot of the small parts that have to line up internally, meaning that the transformation might hinge entirely on a part that you can't see at the time of you completing the transformation, which are on easy to pop off ball joints. Fortunately, they're easier to keep in a returnable state than most mainline generations, so I returned it. And then I turned around and used my Amazon balance to buy Onitopte, who I can't return. Bagnabbit. After nearly half a decade of trying, I've decided that it's finally time for me to give up on the live-action portion of the studio series. I've had some fun and seen some good toys I otherwise wouldn't have if I had avoided it from the beginning, but it's time for me to go. Truth is, the world has told me that I need to start adulting, and that means being more budget conscious by making a choice between figures that I actually want to transform and figures that I really don't want to transform. And it is with no pleasure at all that I lay the blame at the feet of Studio Series Dino, because Dino didn't deserve this. He was screwed out of a toy in the original Dark of the Moon toy line, because apparently some vehicle manufacturers have their heads just so far up their ass that they won't allow more than one toy manufacturer to create licensed products based off of their vehicles. But that problem is negligible compared to my actual issues with the figure, and they are a summation of why I lost interest in this particular part of the studio series. The transformation is an overwrought mess of clear plastic panels that are neither fun nor satisfying to reconfigure. And Satan must have been at Disney World when this thing was created, because boy is the transformation fiddly! Oh no, wait, that's Florida, not Georgia. Stupid Ryan. Oh well, it's the same general area of the US. Apologies to Studio Series fans, because I've tried to get into this line, but I can't. And scripting this part of the review made me learn something about myself. My relationship with the Bayverse and Studio Series is like my relationship with Doctor Who. Yeah, I liked it once, but now I've moved on, and people keep trying and failing to pull me back in because they can't seem to wrap their heads around the fact that I don't want to be pulled back in. And this realization felt absolutely cathartic because now, in a sense, I'm free. I finally feel capable of letting go of my vitriol, my hatred, and my resentment towards these things I don't like, because now I can just admit it to an audience in the whole world. I no longer have to hold on to the stuff that people tell me I'm supposed to like. I can let go and just know peace. But the list ain't over, so let's keep going. Now, on paper, I shouldn't hate this toy. It's just a turtle transformer that's much simpler than Onitopte. On paper. The truth of the matter is that despite its simplicity, it still manages to check off every one of my pet peeves. The transformation that should be simple and efficient is made tedious and clashy by the lack of room to maneuver certain parts, as well as the kinds of joints that are used and the tolerance of said joints. The same applies to turning it into the tank mode. What? You didn't know he had a tank mode? Well, neither did I, because it's not in the instructions. Considering how it's even more annoying to turn it into the tank than it is the cube, my guess is that this was a feature that was scrapped during development. And the only thing that remains from this gimmick is the tooling for tank treads on his flippers. There's also probably some NDAs between me and the truth, so for now, it's just a theory. Oh, too soon. I don't like display statues. I never have, and I never will. In my opinion, there's nothing that a statue can't achieve that an action figure can't also achieve with blast effects, a figure stand, and maybe some light 3D printing, because even after 40 years, the only way Hasbro will give us the most iconic prop from the G1 cartoon is if they pack it in with silly putty that's packed alongside expensive exclusives from Walmart. And that's on top of the total freedom you have to pose the figure and change it as well, which is something that statues can't do. Now, granted, this is all a matter of my personal tastes, and I won't bemoan anyone who chooses to collect statues over action figures. That was the furthest thing from my mind when 5.2 Toys revealed these absolutely gorgeous koi fish figures that include figure stands. The line always seemed to strive for a balance of play and display that almost never let me down. And when I finally got my hands on the version that I wanted, I tore open the box and I could immediately tell that something had gone very wrong. With a borderline unarticulated beast mode and a transformation that relied all too heavily on the brittle clear plastic stand parts forming into the rest of the cube, I can safely say that my faith in this figure was misplaced and that 5.2 Toys actually tricked me into buying a statue. Credit where it's due to Buzzworthy Bumblebee, it might have been the dumping grounds for every other line sloppy seconds, but it was also a great opportunity for Hasbro to reissue molds that were hard to find. And one of those rare reissues was Studio Series Leader Optimus Prime. And my buddy Dr. Lockdown assured me that I'd enjoy this figure. However, I did not. My experience with it was just the worst. His trailer was broken right out of the box, with half of the semicircle used to create his weapons platform from the movie not being properly pinned in, and after transforming it less than 3 times into his vehicle mode, I had already broken the tabs on the grill that allow them to peg together in vehicle mode. Fortunately, unlike the last time I had to deal with Hasbro's customer service, this actually ended well. Because it was broken out of the box, I was able to return it for a full refund. All relatively simple in the grand scheme of things when you think about it.
It honestly saddens me that this was the catalyst for me jumping out of the Studio Series wholesale. Honestly, I thought it would have been something way worse like Studio Series Scourge, but I actually had the sense to avoid that.
That being said, the upcoming Studio Series Bumblebee, Shockwave, and Megatron do have my attention, so maybe when I get those, the line will finally redeem itself in my eyes. But for now, I'm staying well away.
Thank you to the Mad Aussie himself, Dr. Lockdown, for lending me footage of his copy of this toy.
Now, let's move on to number 1. Well, that is after our one dishonorable mention, Amazon. Recently, they've been shipping out my pre-orders way earlier than the actual date that's been stated on the webpage, and that's proving to be a problem not just for me, but for other collectors too who are trying to budget their collecting. TJ Omega went into it in great detail, but the long and short of it is that it's getting to be a problem, not just with Amazon, but with other retailers that get in their products early. And the decision to disqualify my early arrivals from the best and worst of lists wasn't an easy one, because I genuinely love every single figure in the first wave of Transformers Legacy United. They're so good and they deserve to be talked about. And the fact that I want to talk about and review the entire first wave of a line is something that hasn't happened since Transformers Kingdom.
But I'm past my breaking point.
Amazon is not entitled to take my money wherever and more importantly whenever it pleases, especially when their websites say I don't owe them money for another month. Hopefully Amazon learns to ease off on this whole shipping pre-orders earlier than anticipated thing, because I don't want to have to put them on the worst of list next year for this exact same reason.
But I will if I have to, especially since I doubt me saying this will change anything at Amazon. But hey, I can dream.
Anyways. At the nethermost regions of creation, in the timeless, howling abyss of the cosmos, there exists a beast box with a transformation that blasphemes all the religions of man. One lacking such articulation that its slumbering form is left as inert as the statues its cultists have carved in his image. With translucent plastic that is as fragile as our sanity upon beholding its slumbering form. A beast box so vile few on the Facebook fan group defend it, and even fewer sing its praises in public, relegating their arcane rituals of worship to the dark unseen corners of the world, where the light of sanity and reason dare not shine! I am of course referring to the beast box. Rustypiece. Which is kind of ironic considering they literally have an octopus beast box called the old one, but I digress.
Have you ever just looked at the promo images for a toy and been like, wow,
This thing gets what I like. For me, Rustypiece was that figure. I love strange and obscure animals, and I love their Transformers even more, paired with a delicious brass-toned steampunk aesthetic that I could die for. But as many camouflaged ocean predators can attest to, looks can be deceiving. This is yet another figure where I could tell the second I opened the box that something was very, very wrong. We've got brittle clear plastic used for the sockets and ball joints, which means every time you pop them off the ball joints, you're basically activating a doomsday clock. Not that you should have much reason to pop them off the ball joints, but the figure only has 12 points of articulation in total. I counted the total number of joints, and that's basically only half the number of joints that Nessie had, and I criticized her for not having an articulated neck. But to give the devil his due, it does look gorgeous, which is what lured me in here. And you know what? For that alone, I could probably look past the lack of articulation and the clear plastic, if the transformation wasn't a complete nightmare. So you remember how Deformation Space Crimson Wings got a lot of flack for its overwrought transformation? Remember how almost everyone called it a major pain in the ass because it had so many small parts moving all at once? And how it wasn't clear that certain bits were supposed to go in certain places? The one that everyone except for my boy, Dr. Lockdown, had beef with? Well, Rustypiece is almost as complex, but he's only a fifth of the size. There are just so many small moving parts for either mode. And to make things even worse, a lot of the moving parts are internal, which means there isn't a lot of space to move them, which makes the transformation fiddly, and y'all should know by now how well fiddly transformations go down with me.
If you weren't paying attention, they don't.
But what actually scared me most about this figure is that I actually found people online defending it. There are people who think that this transformation is a fun puzzle, and you know what? Fine. You do you. But by that same logic, I have every right to say that this transformation puts the fear of God in my heart. Though not as much as certain fans of the Kiss players.
Kiss player fans aren't real. They can't hurt me.
And for these reasons, Rustypiece has been my least favorite Transformer that I acquired in 2023. But that doesn't mean he has to be your worst. I found Rustypiece very repulsive, but I can only speak for myself. If you liked Rustypiece, sound off in the comments and tell me why you liked Rustypiece so much. Same goes with every other figure on this list. I'm interested to hear your thoughts.
Just keep it in mind that I have a better chance of being receptive to your comment if you attack my argument and not me personally.
So if you genuinely feel that strongly about the subject, I suggest that you make your own videos about it. This fandom always has more room for reviewers, and I welcome you with open arms.
Is that so? How late do you stay open?
Well, with that being said, I've got some best of lists to work on. So until next time, this is Firebite27, over and out.